Hello, welcome to the third session of this short course exploring drawing people. Today we'll be doing some playful exercises to make interesting and more abstract designs. Firstly, we're going to look at simplification, using just line to create the figure, using just the silhouette of the figure. Then we're going to look at exaggerating curves or angles of the figure. Finally, we're going to look at overlaying several images of the figure, such as here and here, to create dynamic compositions. So starting with simplification using line. These examples all use continuous line. That's where you start at one point of the page and you continue drawing without taking your pen off the paper. And that's what we're going to use to try to create exciting drawings from a figure. I've had a look through several of my previous drawings from sessions and decided that I'm going to focus on this dancing figure here because it's got a lovely sort of sense of movement, and I want to try and capture that using just line. I'm going to start with the continuous line technique, but then I'm going to see if I can simplify it into as fewer lines as possible while still communicating the idea of the figure. I think it's important not to work directly from a photograph here, but to have explored first of all through some of the drawing techniques the image that you're going to work from. So I'm working from this drawing here, and now I'm going to place some tracing paper over the top, and I'm going to begin to explore capturing a continuous line image. So that's my first sort of tracing, and I'm going to take that off and have a look, and I can see I've started to capture some quite nice sort of features here, but the things I don't like, I'm not keen on that looping over, as a matter of fact. There, I quite like the fact that I put a little extra bit of detail in here in terms of the laces, and here I prefer it when I put some contour lines coming inwards as well. So I'm going to have another go, and this is going to take several goes, I think, before I have something that I'm really satisfied with. So having tried that several times, I think I've resolved it much better in this final one, where in particular I've reduced the arms to just much simpler lines rather than looping back on themselves, and I've given a little bit more detail into the hands, whilst keeping that sort of flow and feel of the costume in there. And on this one, I accidentally overlaid those two over each other and thought, well, actually it's quite nice to have two different colours. So I think that one is starting to get there much better. And now I want to take that even further and see if I can simplify this down to just a few very simple lines. Based on this experiment, I've sketched this out again, larger, just in pencil, so I can easily rub it out, and now I'm going to try to just pick out the bits that I want to keep. So I definitely want to keep the sort of gesture there, the hand, and this strong line that comes down here. Also this really strong sort of line coming through there into that hand. Okay. The head, I can hint at maybe just that one curve might work, and a curve or two. I'm just trying to pick out certain lines but not all of them, so let's take just that one there. Okay, I'm going to rub out the other lines and see how that looks. Okay, I think that line can join in with this one. I don't think that adds anything, so I'm going to take that out. Maybe just bring that line around just a little bit more. Yes, quite like that. Now that I've got this design, I'm going to try to bring it out stronger by varying the thickness of this line and adding colour. So I've rubbed this out to make it as pale as I can, and now I'm going to start to work back with paint and with watercolor pencils. I've been playing with the thickness of the line and also building up a bit richer colour using red and blue and purple. I think though in places I've gone a bit too thick, so what I'm going to do is use a Tipex pen to edit. And there is my final design. I could then trace that and reproduce it much neater somewhere else, but I have to admit I quite like showing the workings within my work, so I quite like the fact I've left the Tipex there. Next we're going to look at silhouettes. Here are some terrific examples of silhouettes. On the left, Korean Ilya, fashion illustrator, and this wonderful use of a pattern within the shape of the figure, within the silhouette. And then Gustav Klimt, the incredible decorative pattern developed around the figures. It's important to consider carefully what kind of silhouette you want. Some images don't lend themselves very well to silhouettes. So here, this very bunched area of the body is going to look like a big lump. And similarly, when you've got unusual foreshortening, when you just take the silhouette and you aren't able to show one limb in front of the other, it can just look really strange. So you have to be careful what you pick. So I'm going for something nice and safe, which is a dancing figure. Now, you might think, why not just take the photograph and trace around the outside? Well, first of all, that restricts you in terms of the size you can make your final image. But secondly, you're very likely to make mistakes if you do that, and things won't just quite look right. So what I recommend is taking the time, build up your drawing using the structure and the simplified shape and form techniques previously until you've got something like this where you are sure that all the limbs and everything are in the right place. I've carefully cut my silhouette out in card, so you can see it a little bit clearer if I turn it over. And now to use it. Now, one of the simplest things to do is to draw around your silhouette and fill it with pattern. And if you're going to do that, I suggest that you do some exercises first, exploring ideas of pattern. You could do it by drawing around your figure several times, or you could just work on a very simple template of a figure. These are some examples, playing around with pattern and so on, as part of a project with a primary school a few years ago to create a mural on their entrance wall. And here are some images of the work that those children produced. Another thing you can do is pre-prepare some pieces of paper, trace your image onto it and then cut them out, which is what I'm going to do here. So I've got, these are photocopies from a drawing, and I'm going to try using these with the figure. So just looking at it first of all, placing it on and seeing if there's any way that we can get any dynamic echoes like this line behind the figure there. So see if there's anything that will echo through in an interesting way. And I think it might be worth considering using the paper on a bit more of an angle like that. So the curve behind is sort of captured. There is my dancing figure cut out, and looking at it now, I think I would like to build some more yellow in that direction, make a couple of changes, maybe a little bit of yellow there to emphasize that knee sticking out. So I can now add more colour to it. And that's important. It wasn't just a photocopy that I was using, it was a photocopy onto drawing paper so that I can work quite easily back into it. So start to work back on it. So here's my finished silhouette. As you can see, it works much better now. I've filled in the yellow on that side. As an alternative, you could cut out a silhouette in a dark colour and place it over the top of another picture to create a silhouette effect. Or you could decide that you wanted, like Clint, to have aspects of the figure actually showing through a little bit more clearly, like the face and so on. Next, we're going to look at exaggerating curves and angles. These images by Matisse and Leger show the principle of exaggerating curves and angles in order to create a more pleasing, perhaps more abstract composition. And you can just exaggerate curves or just exaggerate angles. It's up to you. On this example I'm going to exaggerate both and end up with something which is looking fairly abstract. I'm going to work from this picture, which has got some good curves in it, but also some good strong angles. I've already sketched out a structure drawing of it here, which I'm going to work on, but first of all I'm going to look at it a little bit more with some tracing paper and a pencil. So just trying to think my way through what have we got here. Strong sort of curving sort of shapes around here, just sort of trying to identify where those sort of strong curves are, and then use bold angles and curves, angles. So it's not that different to doing the simplified shapes and forms. All it is we're actually going to go with those and really try to enjoy playing with those curves and angles. So there's very strong sort of shapes in there. Got some sort of idea, and now move straight on from there onto my drawing. And I think I'll start with watercolor pencils. Let's see, so it's very bold circles. And you'll notice that straight away I'm starting to exaggerate and enlarge some of those shapes. Interlock. Playing with those bold circular shapes here. And then by contrast, these strong, really strong angles here. I really have exaggerated that bit, haven't I? Right, just keep that going. Get some of that blue in there. And maybe some of that sort of black at the top. So I really have turned it into just lots of simple angles, and now I'm going to work into it and play with it and just see what happens. So there's my finished picture based on that figure. You can still see the resemblance, but it's much more playful, kind of exaggerated. It's like a really hunky, muscly sort of thing with quite a funny haircut in the end. So give it a go and see how you get on. Final thing we're going to have a look at is what if you have overlay multiple images. So here we have a series of artworks which explore overlapping multiple figures. In the middle you can pretty much pick out the figure as you can with Bomberg on the right bottom. The top one's by Malevich and Kara. It's a little bit harder to actually pick out the figure, but all of them exploring multiple figures overlapping to suggest movement. The odd one in the pack is the one by Kwabena Giedu, where you have figures which are much more curved, overlapping each other, and they aren't necessarily the same figure or stages of movement of one figure, but a beautiful interpretation of overlapping shapes with colour. So the easiest way to approach this technique is to draw around a silhouette that you've already got, repeatedly moving it around, or you can always make yourself a little movable figure like this so that you can change the pose as you go along. And the images I'm going to show you now were made in that way. So hopefully you can see the figure has been repeated over and over in these examples with different coloured lines, and then they've worked back in around them to develop and elaborate their design. If you'd like something more challenging, try out these websites. They have some examples of poses which move, so you can pause it, draw from one particular pose, and then restart it, draw from the next position, and so on. Or if you look up Edward Muybridge, so examples I'm going to show you in a minute, he's a photographer from the turn of last century. You can find examples of figures in motion, and that's what I'm going to use. So this image of the running man is what I will be basing my piece of work on, and I started by doing some preliminary sketches, structure drawings, scribble drawings, in order to just try to get a feel for how the body changes. But what I'm quite keen on in this one is exaggerating, and I particularly want to exaggerate how angular the figure is. So now that I've got a little bit of a feel for it, I'm going to go straight in on my piece of paper, exploring that figure. Okay, I've made a start. The figures are still looking quite separate, so now I'm going to start working back into it. And what I'm going to try and do as I work back into it is really just concentrate on the angles within it, rather than thinking about the figure, so it becomes more abstract. I'm fairly happy with that. I quite like the dynamic feel that it's got, and I think I'm going to leave it at that. An alternative approach could be to take the same figure perhaps from different angles, as you can see here, or multiple figures, allowing them to overlap and then playing around with colour and pattern in the areas in between. It's a particularly lovely image, I think, that could really inspire you. That's all from this session. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you do Facebook, please do post images of what you've been creating on our Art for All Facebook page. Bye-bye. If you've enjoyed this course, please fill in the feedback form on our website to help show our funders these courses are valuable. Details coming up now. Bye.